Growing up when I did in gaming, one of the coolest little accessories that made its way around that I did not get the chance to actually mess with as a kid was the PS1 screen attachment, where it actually gave you this cool little on-the-go way to play a PlayStation 1. I mean, sure, being able to hook up to a TV was always the preferred option, but having this kind of on-the-go small one was a really neat idea. And now we have an option for that with the Xbox Series S that I may have decided to take to a slightly silly extreme. Now, if you haven't heard or seen this thing before, this is the xScreen from UPspec Gaming. It was part of a Kickstarter that happened last year that, full disclosure, I did not take part in, though I did share it, and, you know, I thought it was a really cool idea, and they ended up sending me a review unit, so that's the one that I have right here. And full honesty, it's a lot better than I thought it was going to be. Not that I expected it to be absolutely terrible or a piece of trash or anything, it's just when it comes to a device like this, your first thought is, well, yeah, the whole selling point of it is that it's going to be this portable, cool little solution. It has a specific gimmick. That's all it really needs to do at the end of the day. But the experience that I've had with it was actually a lot more positive than just it getting that job done. There are absolutely some problems with it as well that I'm going to talk about, but overall, my experience with it has been really positive. First off, just working through the kind of basics of how this whole thing works. Simplest terms, the xScreen is just this monitor and a little dock attachment on the back that plugs into the back of your Series S. It takes up the USB and HDMI ports. USB is how it's drawing power. HDMI is how it's getting the video signal. It does also block the Ethernet port, which, given the kind of specific use this thing has, more or less is fine. I could still see some very specific situations where it would be cool to have access to that, and so that's a little bit of a bummer that's blocked, but it is. Well, the power port for the system is still available because that's how you power the whole system and this screen, and the expansion port is also opened up as well, so if you're making use of one of those cards to add more space to your Series S, that's still going to be fully usable as well. After you plug it into the back of the system, there are these pair of clamps that you can attach on the sides. It ships with the basic white ones, but there are other colors that are sold separately if you want to diversify that a little bit and add just a little pop to the sides. There's also a stand that you can get for it that allows you to put the whole Series S up with the little speaker looking fan window facing forward, which is fine. I think that's kind of a neat idea. I could see some limited applications where maybe you want to have the screen sit a little higher up. Honestly though, I definitely prefer this setup where it's just the Series S laying down flat and the screen popped open. After it's plugged in, there are a couple settings that it's recommended you mess with right away. In particular, while the screen is 1080p, for whatever reason, the Xbox Series S immediately detects it as wanting to favor a 720p signal, which will not look quite as good once you first hook it up. Once you make that change though, it's actually a very crisp looking image because obviously it is a much smaller screen than a traditional television. 1080p on this size is definitely gonna look a lot better than say on a 50-inch TV. And there are a number of power options you can adjust that is a good idea. In particular, one that makes it so that when you close the screen of the xScreen, because it detects that the input has turned off, the Xbox will also turn off. The reason why this is very important is that if you did close the screen while the Xbox Series S is still running, the Series S is obviously going to be generating heat, is pumping heat out of that fan at the top right there directly into the monitor display, and that is not good. You don't want to do that. Don't let that do that. That is a particular danger with this if you're not being careful, which is why having that setting option to have it auto shut down is really handy. Now, in terms of the performance of the system, the monitor itself is fairly bare bones and simple. This is not HDR. You're not going to be getting Dolby Vision out of this thing. It's 1080p 60, so even if there are those games that can push for a higher frame rate on the Series S, you're not going to be able to tap into that while using this particular display. It is a very simple, straightforward way. That being said, the clarity and visual quality of this monitor is a lot better than I anticipated. It looked a little washed out when I first set it up, but part of the reason why that is because the brightness was initially set to being really cranked up. It was set to 80. I dropped that down to 50, which is still plenty bright to see everything, and it really rebalanced a lot of the colors really well. Visuals are crisp. It's still able to do 60 Hertz, so a lot of the games that can support 60 frames per second still look really smooth. One specific factor that I think is important to point out is that along with the visuals of it, the input lag on it is really nice. The main way I really tested this was by going into fighting games and just pressing different attack buttons to see how quickly it's reflected on screen. It's definitely similar to the kind of experience you'd have on having a TV set to gaming mode. It's not going to be the kind of delay you might feel in some other TVs that aren't designed for gaming in mind, where you have that noticeable delay. Now, control options on it are fairly minimal. There's a power button for the monitor. There is a little menu you can open up to at least look at certain settings and adjust only a small handful of them, like the contrast and brightness. There's quick keys for both brightness and volume. I wish it had like an immediate mute button. That'd be really nice because the volume controls are very slow. You just kind of have to hit and hold the button for a while if you want to turn the volume up a lot or bring it all the way down. So having some kind of mute button would have been really appreciated. Not a make or break kind of thing, just kind of one small annoyance with it. And while we're talking about it, I will say that one of the downsides to this, or at least things I don't like as much, is the speakers in it are not great. They get the job done for the most part. You're gonna hear the game just fine, but especially when the volume is really cranked up and if you're trying to make it louder, there's definitely a little bit of distortion and crushing that's happening with game audio. It doesn't handle very loud sounds super great. To the point where I actually had this really quick thought where I was like, oh man, I really wish this thing had an audio out. And then I realized what an actually kind of dumb thought that is, because being an Xbox, you could just plug a headset into your controller, or of course use one of the officially supported wireless headsets that connects directly to the system or makes use of the front USB port, and you're good to go. And then there's just the convenience of this whole package, which is after all the whole sales pitch of it, right? And honestly, that's excellent. Once it's attached to the Xbox and you use the clamps, it's on there pretty tight, and the option to just close the screen and throw it into a bag, and the only thing you have to carry around is your controller and a power cord, maybe a headset if you want to use one of those as well, makes it a really awesome portable solution. And that's also the kind of thing with this, right? This is a very niche kind of product. Most people out there are obviously going to be wanting to use their system with a TV done and done. Where this really does end up being a cool product to have is a travel solution with a Series S, which is already one of the benefits of a Series S compared to other consoles out there because of its small size, and B, maybe as a sort of like emergency option when someone else wants to use the TV. If you're in a situation where you have like a main central television, you're living with multiple people, and there's maybe, you know, times where someone wants to watch a movie or use it else, having this option to just immediately hook up this device to the Series S and play on your own little isolated setup is really cool. And in fact, it's already something I have done at home. Is it a #1 must-buy product that everyone needs to have? No, absolutely not. But if you like the idea of having a portable way of using the system, this is a really interesting way to doing it. I mean, combining this with the price of a Series S basically comes out to the cost a little more than a Series X, but it is this on-the-go version of the system that you can't really replicate with a lot of other consoles right now. So much so that there's even a very extreme direction you could take this, which is what I went ahead and did. Okay, a little bit of a ridiculous setup that I'm wearing. Look, Elden Ring came out, I've been really excited for it, I don't really want to take any breaks, so with this setup, I can just play it all the time on the go. This is a completely mobile setup using the xScreen where you can just play the Xbox, maybe not as a handheld, I don't think that's the word choice I would use, but as a portable system that works. The setup here is actually really simple. Obviously, we're using the xScreen as the way to see the screen. In fact, it's actually all plugged in and working right now. And it's all sitting on this harness desktop system that I bought for, honestly, way too much money considering how it's built. It's not very good, but it gets the job done that I'm looking for right now. It's being plugged into a battery bank that is inside this backpack that I'm wearing. And when I'm out on the go, I connect to my phone as a hotspot in order to be connected to the internet because this is, of course, a digital Xbox Series S, so for some games, I have to have that online connection. Is this at all practical? No, not really. The desk is constantly driving into my chest and it's not very comfortable. Also, I've learned that the screen, while great indoors, doesn't really handle direct sunlight very well, so taking this outside, not so much a good move. I may have died a few more times in Elden Ring than I normally do. Couple. But the point is, it was an idea we thought of, and I mean, it works. So there's all my thoughts on the xScreen, along with I do have a link to the actual official website for it down below in the description. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to let me know with a like as well as subscribe if you haven't yet. If you didn't like the video, let me know with a dislike as well, just so I know. Now, I'm gonna go play some more Elden Ring.